Hello, welcome to the Magdalene Interview Series. I want to ask you, those of you watching with us today, what do you think lives at the intersection of Mary Magdalene and Black Madonna? There's a lot of thoughts around this, and I have with me today someone who has been deeply immersed in Black Madonna energy and work and Magdalene energy and work for some time. We can't wait to hear from you, Alessandra. And I've created, if you're new to this conversation, I've created the Magdalene Interview Series to widen the conversation about Mary Magdalene, to bring in all of the facets and elements of who she is, including all the spiritual lineages and traditions that she carried, so that we can see ourselves reflected in her and step more deeply into our own leadership through her example. And I also have created this series in conjunction with the Magdalene Pleasure Pilgrimage, which I'm leading to the south of France in September. And so as you've listened to these conversations, if something resonates with you and you have seen yourself, walking in that land, we'd love to have you come in and join us and be immersed in those beautiful ancient codes and healing sites. Alessandra is also leading a pilgrimage, and I hope you'll tell us all about it. But let's start by having you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work.
My name is Alessandra Belloni. I'm from Rome, Italy, but I live in New York, New Jersey. And I apologize, my background is not my regular background, would be full of Black Madonnas behind me and drums. I am in a hotel for a situation that I had to deal with my apartment just today. But I bring the Mary Magdalene and the Madonna with me. So here she is, the traveling version. And this one is very powerful. And then I have another one behind me. But so I was born in Rome, and I do have a lineage through my mother, who was very devoted to the Madonna, not necessarily the Black Madonna, but Mary. So I grew up with that devotion, and I also wrote about it in my book, Healing Journeys with the Black Madonna, which has a cover of a Magdalene. I want to show it because this is a modern painting. This is not an ancient painting. And one of my best friends in the world painted this for my production dedicated to the Black Madonna. And then we chose as a cover. But he was inspired by the Mary Magdalene. She has the skull and the chalice because he also knew the connection. So in my childhood, without knowing, I had my first communion in a church in Rome, where I had a very mystical experience. My first mystical experience, I was 9 years old, because my parents were separating, which was very rare in Italy at that time. And I prayed to this Madonna image. And then I found out later, when I started doing research, that was a Mary Magdalene painting in that church where my mother did her communion, whole her family lineage, all the women. And so that was an initiation, without knowing it.
Yeah.
And that prayer, for that time was received. My parents did get back together. So that was my first, introduction to that.
Wow.
But I grew up with this devotion to Mary, but because I'm from Rome, where the Pope resides, and even though I'm Roman, I'm not a fan of the Pope or the Vatican at all. No offense to anybody listening. I grew up Christian and Catholic, but I don't really go for the way they run the business, this patriarchal society. And so I was, even if I'm from there, and I was devoted to the Madonna, I only discovered the Black Madonna going down to the south of Italy because of my music. So for people who don't know me, I'm a singer, but I specialize in Southern Italian drumming, ritual dance, and theater combined. And I began my music theater dance company 45 years ago, and with my partner John La Barbera, the guitarist. And as we started traveling through the South, because it's no way you can really learn an authentic indigenous tradition of an ethnic culture unless you live it through it. You really got to go down into the deep roots to really understand, what these cultures represent. And these are thousands of years old. So by traveling around the south of Italy, from Naples, Calabria, Campania, Puglia, Sicily, I mostly started in Calabria, the part south of Italy, And in the churches, I found black Madonnas and not white Madonnas. Most of the time, they were black. And I couldn't understand in the beginning why are they black because in Rome they didn't tell us that, you know. And
Yeah.
then also, what was really intriguing is the music that in these places in the south of Italy, not in Rome. My grandparents came from south of Rome, so I did have a connection to the
Mm.
music because I played this music. But I that's what really intrigued me. You know, the fact that people were drumming, singing, dancing all night long till sunrise as a prayer to the Great Mother, and she was black. So that really intrigued me because the miracles, you know, the people ask for during this devotion still happen. And I had some on my own, and I got just, you know, I'll share one as the beginning of my, you know, actual spiritual path. But so that path, you know, the music, drumming, dance was to inspire me, my partner, then to start presenting performances, you know, in New York, especially, and then around the states, but mostly New York. But then there was a time where I got sick in 1986, and I had a serious condition. It's very common among women. It's called dysplasia, and it's cancerous cells of the cervix. So it was very scary. I had the surgery, you know, to take out the cancerous cells, but I had a vision of the Black Madonna over my bed when I woke up. It was very real, you know, and with her hands out and telling me that I was gonna follow her path, like, you know, with her hands like this, and that I would feel other people's pain, and that she was the voice of the earth. So that was, you know, a complete life changing experience, and that's what led me to go deeper, to go back into these towns where people sing for her, drum for her, and to write an opera called The Voyage of the Black Madonna. And that was back in when people weren't talking about certain things as much. It was 1990 and 1991, and then I put all the connections that I found that each Black Madonna was connected to a goddess, a black goddess. So Cibele from Turkey, you know, the Earth Mother, the goddess of the moon, Diana, Artemis, and Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, Aphrodite, and the main one, Isis from Egypt. So, but as I was doing this research, I also found out there was a connection with Mary Magdalene. She kept showing up, and that that took me to do another opera based on the Passion of Christ from the point of view of the women, from a medieval poem that we learn in Italy in school. It's called Stabat Mater, Donna de Paradiso, which means that the woman was at the cross and the Lady of Paradise. So this was an incredible work we did at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, where we're artists in residence. So I write the show, direct, and my partner John La Barbera does the music. And that's where I first then went deeper into the Mary Magdalene, representing her on stage. I was Mary, and I had another woman play Mary Magdalene. And that was before the Da Vinci Code in
Wow.
1995. And because I did so much research, you know, I went like, I studied the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and all that. And then I realized she was the wife of Jesus. So I wrote that in the program. And that's how we represented it, which was, you can imagine, extremely controversial because
Yeah.
church. So that was, you know, a lot of information, but that's how I went first to the Black Madonna, and then into the Mary Magdalene. But you know, they're connected, but they're also separate, you know, because in the way we did it in our passion play, I could feel that became really strong. These two women who love the same man, the
Oh,
mother and the wife,
that's beautiful.
and the love for these men. So I really staged it in an incredible way. I'm not saying it to brag myself up. You know, we were in the New York Times, Channel 7, because it was unusual the way I put it on stage. You know, using the drumming, the music, and Mary Magdalene did a beautiful belly dance, you know, around her lover, you know, Jesus. But people loved it, but
Oh,
it was controversial.
That like, oh, there were several points of things that you shared where I felt like tears welling up. The image
Oh,
of Mary Magdalene belly dancing in a
beautiful.
radiant, seductive, like belly dancing by nature is seductive. And it's like, yes, oh, the image of seeing that portrayed on stage, I'm just like breathtaken by
Yeah,
that.
and the woman who played it first, we did it for a few years, was not a dancer, was not an actress. She's actually quite famous classical flute player, Viviana Guzman. But we were friends, but she felt what we were trying to do because
Mm.
I, what I do is not for any actor. It's ritual theater, and then we go deep into the Black Madonna and this passion play completely on a complete different take. Even though Jesus, of course, was important, she just felt that she had to be the Mary Magdalene, and she did it, I think, for 2 3 years in a row. And it was everybody cried when we did the first scene together. Was unbelievable, and it was very real. Because somehow I think if you enter that space of what she represented, and also the mother, people just follow you because that grief, that grief of the love, that kind of love that I think Jesus and Mary Magdalene shared. It's universal love, unconditional love, and it's so much more. And I think because the music was very good, John wrote a piece called "The Song of Mary Magdalene" and "The Dance of Mary Magdalene," and some were duets. But when she did that dance, it was unbelievable because Jesus was already arrested, and he was in that position, and he had the guards protecting him. But the way she danced with her magic, she ended up separating the guards and freeing him, and that was their last moment of love together.
Oh my
In a
God.
church. Well, it's a different church. St. John the Divine is famous for being unusual, but it was really everybody cried.
Uh-huh.
Everybody. So that's how I started my deep connection with her at an older age. When I was a child, she was around me, but I wasn't aware. But and I know you go to France, so that's one place where obviously she's very um, not only known, but there were people think she lived the last part of her life.
Right. Right. Yes, that's the intention. These pieces of what you shared about what you've done and the research you've done in Italy and with the various Black Madonnas. I'm so like fascinated by that. I think what I wanted to ask you first, and then you can tell us as much about that as you want to, is um if a woman is just coming into this work and she's recognized she has some spiritual gifts, but she's not really super clear on why does Black Madonna matter? Why does Mary Magdalene matter? What would you say to a woman at that intersection from this place where you've like literally devoted your life to this?
That's true. Well, for in my life path, it was a path, as I said, because I was sick and I was healed by the vision of the Black Madonna. What it represented first to me was healing, and Mary Magdalene was a healer. She was a saint and a healer. So I think the first thing for women that are searching is to connect to what that really means, because we could all be healers as women. But the Black Madonna is the darkness of the womb of the woman. It's just the darkness of the womb of the earth, the dark side of the moon and the cosmos. All of that is healing, that the woman gives birth and that womb where we come from. So I think the first thing is connect that, to the darkness of your own womb, without being ashamed, and know that there is healing power there. And that's what the Black Madonna really represents. It's that darkness of our womb, but in a cosmic way, the cosmic mother. Same, I think, for Mary Magdalene, who I believe, of course, that she existed and she was a healer and a saint, but that's the same. She was a woman who was empowered in a time where that was definitely not common.
Yeah.
And she was in her power. She the way she anointed Jesus, and the fact that Jesus came to her in resurrection. It's being in your own power. Connect to the womb, which is dark. So don't be afraid of the darkness, because the darkness really means life, where we come from. And from that, which is what happened to me, I had a disease, cancerous cells of the cervix, the womb, and
Yeah.
then it was healed. So I think the first thing is really connect to that. Even if I work with a lot of women when I do workshops who have been sexually abused, and that's when everything, not only the trauma, but the things get broken. So you
Yeah.
need to start putting that back together,
Mm.
heal your womb. From that comes the power. And one woman who knew that was Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
And also, I believe that she was dark because she was North African. So that's the other aspect of the Black Madonna and the Mary Magdalene. That's why the Vatican is hiding that truth. In the Renaissance, they made the Madonnas blonde and blue eyes, and Jesus red hair, whatever. The Mary Magdalene's beautiful paintings they made in the Renaissance. She's white, but it's impossible. In North Africa, they were dark. So the first images of that, especially in the Orthodox Church, where Mary Magdalene is really holy, the Santa Sofia is connected to Mary Magdalene, the Holy Sophia, they were dark, in the first 300 years of the church.
Right.
So it's also racial. Of course, they were dark people, but it's also, remember, the womb, which is where
Yes.
we carry our power. And when people are being abused, women, that gets shattered, and then you got to bring it back and be in your power. That's why I represented the Mary Magdalene that way, in her power,
Yeah.
and with the dance of the womb.
Yes.
Makes sense?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I agree. And I love everything that you're bringing to this. Um, one of the primary reasons I created this interview series is because I recognized, as soon as I created the pilgrimage and started talking to more women about it, I recognized that this Magdalene conversation among spiritual women has become heavily whitewashed, not just from the Pope, but we're carrying that over into,
Mhm.
a lot of white women are having these connections with Mary Magdalene and unknowingly not making space for women of color when Mary herself was a woman of color.
Yeah,
And
that's great that you said that. Thank
it has lit a fire in me. I mean, I am like, what are we doing?
you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah,
You
very important.
And I also think it speaks to this element of spiritual traditions. You shared this rich lineage that comes from your ancestry, and then not just your ancestry, but the deep research that you've done to go and be with the drums in the southern Italy, in the all of the communities and things like that. And I think the conversation around how we hold spiritual traditions is also really important. Like,
Yeah,
being born a white woman on the western side of the United States, I have been born in privilege in almost every possible way. Not that I haven't had trials, but definitely born in privilege. And when it comes to spirituality,
compared to, yeah.
I've stepped into that. Like, originally it was like a flea market. It was like, oh, what's going to bring me healing? Let me try this. Oh, I don't really like that. Okay. And that is
Yeah.
what I've learned, is that such an extraction and such an offense to people who've carried these traditions for so long. So I'd love to hear, how you maintain right relationship and how you hold some of these things around spiritual traditions and lineage.
Well, again, it has to do with traveling. You have to go to the places. I mean, of course, in my daily life, as I mentioned to you before, in my regular daily life, I'm surrounded by the collection of Black Madonnas and paintings and the drums and all that. But for me, you can't really get deeper unless you travel to the places where these traditions are still
Mm,
alive. They're not anything of the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I do make that my life. So when I go to the south of Italy, like the pilgrimage I'm going to do the first week of August, I take students to experience that, how the local devotees live their life with the Black Madonna. It's their life. They leave most of their life for that day of the feast to go to the Black Madonna and chant and weep and ask for miracle and drum and dance. So for me, I still make that my main priority, because without doing that, living, especially because I live in the United States, like you said, we don't have that connection here.
Yeah.
So if people really want to study and learn this, like you're going to Southern France, you need to really spend the money, take the time off, and follow the research. I mean, if you want to follow Black Madonna, a lot of information is in my book, but there are other books out there. But it really is a sacrifice. The whole idea of sacrifice is not so popular among, especially, like I say, especially with some, white women or white, society. They want things fast. I want to learn this, 1, 2, 3, in 1 week I'll be the expert. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to go time and understand that it's a process. And before you receive a vision or a healing, time goes by. Sometimes you have a mystical experience and you have an awakening, but it really is a sacrifice in many ways of time, money, and travel to these places and have your own
I love
experience. Like I only went to one place in southern France, which transformed me, and I wrote a song. It's the Sainte Marie de la Mer, where Santa Sara la Cali and the Black Madonna is. And I always wanted to go there because I know that there is May 24th, it's the feast of Santa Sara, the Mary Magdalene, and there. And the gypsies, she's the queen of the gypsies. And as you can tell by my appearance, I have this gypsy soul in me. So I was there, but not for the feast. I don't know if you have been there for the
No.
feast. Not yet. I need to make that a priority. Maybe we should do it together next year, because it's a let's make that promise. So for people who are listening too, it's an incredible feast, and all the gypsies come from all over Europe to honor the Black Madonna and Mary Magdalene together. I went there once. It was not the feast, and you go into the crypt underneath the church, and here's this huge statue of the Black Madonna. They call her Santa Sara la Cali. So Cali, India, where the gypsies originated in Rajasthan. And the name of the town is the Three Marys of the Sea, because they say Mary Magdalene and Mary of Jacob and Mary Salome came together in this boat and landed there. That's the legend. But boy, when I went into the crypt, the legend came alive. I could feel this presence so strong. That was my personal most transformation experience with the presence of Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
I just fell on my knees and started crying. And then I turned around. The people who took me, there were these two guys. One was a filmmaker, one was a photographer. They were weeping away. They were like, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one. And then, some gypsies walked in. Everybody was crying because her presence is in that crypt, dark again, under the earth. And when I came out, I was in a trance. I was completely tranced out. And I was feeling kind of sick too, when you get in that zone. And I asked them, let's go to the beach. The church is on the beach. And I went in the water with my drum, and this song came called Sainte Marie de la Mer in French and then in English. And it was so clear she was giving me this song. And it was beautiful. And then I came back to New York, completely forgot the song. And which was like a Gregorian chant.
Yeah.
And then I went to the water, because I live by the water in the river. And then I started praying, and please give me the song back. And finally I got it back. And then we recorded it. But, and it's a beautiful tune. I mean, not because I wrote it, but it came from her.
Yeah.
So that's really my strongest experience with feeling her presence. And I'm sure that's what happens when you go there, right? In southern France. Do you go to that spot, to San Maria della
So
Mer?
I have not yet been. I'm taking this pilgrimage and we're all going as equals. No one is the teacher. We have a guide, a friend of mine that lives down there who's gonna, show us, lick your finger and turn left at this, when the wind blows and all of
Oh,
that.
that's
There's a
great.
lot of, yeah. But and also, I know a lot of the stories, but to have someone who lives there who can say, more depth into some of the stories and things. But it's also been really important to me that it's held in such a way that there's no one projecting onto anyone else, why they're weeping or what this spiritual experience means to them or
Because
about who
it's
they are.
personal.
Yes. So
That's great.
yes, it's brave.
Well, I might want to join you.
Please do. Please
Yeah, I mean,
do.
when I do the pilgrimage, I go as a teacher because first we start with 2 days of drumming and dance and singing, in the Amalfi Coast, a beautiful hotel on the beach. Then I take people to meet this group that is devoted to the Madonna, that Black Madonna, and they do that drumming and dance. And then we go to another feast where they take the Black Madonna out of the sea, very similar to San Maria della Mer. They take the Madonna into the sea, so she's always connected with the sea. The Black Madonna comes from the sea, goes back to the sea like Aphrodite. So I take people to witness that incredible feast where every year they reenact that, finding the Black Madonna. And then we go to another Black Madonna of the Sea in Positano in the Amalfi Coast. Beautiful Byzantine icon because, again, she's there. She came from the sea and she's there to protect the coast. And then we go to the mountains. That's where we end, to the Black Madonna on Monte Vergine, who is the protector of gays and transgenders from way back before Christianity. So there's a big gay community that goes there. And I hired this singer who is one of them. They're called Femminelli. They're men, women. And they chant for her in a very specific, beautiful way. So we spend a day with him at her feet. And then we go, and my favorite Black Madonna, who's connected to the goddess Isis, Our Lady of Freedom. And the women there chant for us. Then we end with music. And everyone comes with me, like you said, even though I'm the teacher, but when we're there, I just let people have their own experience because I explain things before, and then once we go, we go.
That's
And
so
everybody has a different experience too.
right. Because there's like awakening into our own ancient roots and our own ties and why this even why we're called to this and everything. So unique. We're all coming from different backgrounds. And oh, I love how you lead. That sounds so enchanting. Oh my goodness.
We should be doing this together someday.
Agree. This has been such a rich and beautiful conversation. And the way that you hold leadership, I thank you. Like I
Thank
see
you.
you. My
Thank
goodness.
you.
And so many of the pieces that you brought into this element of it, what is our spirituality calling us into sacrifice, and where can we open ourselves up more to that? And also these pieces about the dark. Like I think that if we aren't speaking about the dark and we're speaking about Mary Magdalene, maybe we should do a little more work before we keep speaking about Mary Magdalene,
Thank
because my
you.
goodness.
Yes.
That's exactly, and every step I have taken with Mary Magdalene has called me into a deeper layer of sacrifice. But it
Aha.
doesn't feel, yes, but it's never felt like the sacrifice that I felt when I was in Christianity. It doesn't feel like I'm contorting myself to become someone different. It
Yeah.
feels like it's calling me to rip away the layers that were not truly me and step into deeper versions of who I really am.
Yeah. The beginning of Christianity, actually. But you grew up Christian or not Catholic or not Catholic?
I grew up non-denominational Christian, and then when I was 18, I joined the Mormon church and left just 2.5 years ago.
Wow, that's intense.
That's very intense. That's very intense. I have flipped
That's another conversation.
another conversation.
And I'm glad to see the path you're on. That means a lot.
Thank you.
That's important.
Thank you. Agreed. Yes.
Because
So
I
my
don't know, I have a lot of different ideas of Mormons. I only met them through the arts. I worked with artists in New York who were Mormons but left it. All great artists, but I don't know much about it, so I can't really say. But so great for me to see young women, taking these paths, and because look at the time we're living, we're really in the worst of patriarchal society right now.
Mhm. Yes. Well, and it's something that I credit the Mormon Church for, that I'm very grateful that I had that step point, is that
Uh-huh.
they teach that there's a divine mother. They teach that there's a heavenly mother. And if I hadn't had that, in my previous non-denominational Christianity, like, being First Southern Baptist and stuff, there's no connection to the women. Like,
No.
there's not even a worship of Mary, or, you're not supposed to do that either. And so I had no connection to the women. And then at least in the Mormon Church, I had this teaching about this divine mother. And that's
That's
what
nice to
drew
know.
me towards like all of the goddesses, and also seeing this, like, wow, Mary Magdalene sits at this intersection, and Black Madonna, and mirrors to us all of these different goddesses. It's all facets of what
Ah,
it means to be woman. And eventually that cracked my heart open enough. I couldn't hold the cognitive dissonance of some of the things that weren't so sacred.
wow, very
What
interesting.
led me to leave.
So within the Mormon Church, Mary Magdalene is present.
Well, they know about her because she's in the Bible.
Right.
They do read the Bible, and so they know about her. But it was very much this, like, subservient side character that followed around the more important, like the
The
apostles and
apostolic, yeah.
Jesus, and definitely not apostle to the apostles. Definitely not, like, maybe this little whispering hint of they were married, but not emphasized. And so
Right.
yeah, learning these deeper things about her and going, wait, why is this not represented anywhere, like in our beliefs, and what are we doing? That's huge parts of
Interesting. But
yeah.
there are Catholic churches, not only two come up my mind, but there are more in Italy where there is Black Madonnas and the Mary Magdalene, either a painting or a statue. So the Vatican Church didn't succeed to hide her at all, because the painters, especially in the Renaissance, they really knew what they were doing. They were initiated, in the mysteries for sure. So there's one in Siena, which is very famous, the Duomo of Siena. The basilica is beautiful, beautiful. It's the Black Madonna that sits in the chapel, la Madonna del Voto. It's an icon. And then there's this incredible, huge statue of Mary Magdalene with the long hair, which actually, that statue is what inspired me to the way I represented the Mary Magdalene in the show, in the production. She has long hair and like a Middle Eastern dress, and she's carrying the alabaster jar, looking at the Black Madonna. It's
Mm.
beautiful. So if you go to Italy, Siena, it's right there in front of you, and it's Catholic Church. And the other one is in the church where I go, where I end the pilgrimage, Our Lady of Freedom, Madonna della Libera, connected to Isis. There is a chapel with the Black Madonna, and then right outside on the wall, there's this beautiful painting of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, and he's hugging her, from above on his hand on her head, and she's touching him. It's beautiful. So there are a lot of churches that show that. It's got
Mm-hmm.
to look for her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So she's present.
This
They
has been
didn't succeed.
so enriching, Alessandra. Thank you for sharing your heart and your story and
Thank
the
you.
leadership that you stand in. Again, for those of you who are watching, check out her book, and I'm going to purchase it as well and read. I can't wait to read all of the things. And if you feel so called, go talk to her, check out her pilgrimage, and perhaps Italy is calling to you. And then 1 month later, come with me to France.
Yes, I want to come. So let's stay in touch, because one pilgrimage, of course, Southern France is calling me back. I gotta go back.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thanks again so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you to those of you who have watched with us. Feel free to leave comments and things. Go check Alessandra out on Instagram. And thanks for an exciting week. This week was packed full of so many beautiful interviews. I am like learning, I feel like from a fire hose, and just trusting my own heart to be big enough to contain it all. And so stay tuned with us for the next episode of the Black Madonna, the Magdalene Interview Series.
Thank you. Thank you. Grazie, as we say in Italian. God bless and see